Today's video is brought to you by horrible sounding snares. So I decided to do an updated video on this particular topic for the benefit of my newer viewers out there. There might be one or two videos on my channel talking about crappy sounding snares, but I may have left out a few significant reasons why your snare that's in front of you is sounding pretty horrible. So this video, I'm going to show you, I'm going to go through all of those, a couple of newer ones, and give you the quick fixes for each of these problems. So if there's a snare drum in your life that's currently sounding horrible, maybe it's your own, maybe it's a church snare, maybe it's a backline snare, either way, grab it. This video is for you. I'm going to show you how to fix it. So I'm going to start out with the most common cause that I've ever run into over the years for crappy sounding snares. Doesn't make a difference if it was like a $900 DW snare or a $150 Pearl snare. I go to hit the thing, sounds like hot butt juice. The first thing that I do is flip it over. The most common thing you're going to run into is that the bottom head is way too loose. I can't even tell you how many times I've run into this. The bottom head, or your snare side head, is the most important head in terms of how your snare is going to sound overall. The only thing that you need to remember is that the bulk of your tuning range with any snare drum happens with the top head. As soon as you crank up the bottom head and leave it, you can put the top one wherever you want. Now, I've also encountered quite a few horrible sounding snares where the top head was too loose. So sometimes that can be the problem too. The thing there is that you can tell when a low tuned top head is intentional and when it's not. Sometimes it's tuned low because they're going for a particular sound. But normally when you see that, there's other evidence that it was intentional. There might be an O-ring or a couple of pieces of duct tape or whatever that they put on it, or 2 or 3 moon gels. They're just going for a big, deep, fat sound. If you encounter a snare drum where the top head is really loose and you don't see anything else on it, that is basically just lack of knowing how to tune a snare drum. So you can tell when this is the case because, you'll go to hit it and it'll just be overtones steady. It'll just start ringing like crazy. And that on top of the, thuddy sound, it's just not cool. So again, all you need to do is grab a drum key, go around each one of the tension rods, give them a couple of turns, make sure that bottom head is nice and tight, and then you can start messing with the top one. Another issue that you can run into with bad sounding snare drums is unevenly tensioned tension rods. All right, so when it was being tuned up, not much attention was paid to, the evenness of these rods. And if they're all out of whack, what can happen is you go to hit it in the middle, and now you got all of these harmonics kind of fighting with each other. You start to hear all of them at the same time. So with whatever snare drum tuning technique that you're into, whether you want to do the star pattern or, do the 2-key thing that I showed y'all how to do, the object of the game is the same. You just want to get all of these even. So what you can do to check it is I like to throw the snares off. And I'll just tap in front of each one. And just basically make sure that they all sound the same. So first, get it in the range that you want it, and then double check the tension in front of each of these rods and make sure that they all sound the same. Now, let's talk about a couple of problems that you might find underneath. All right? Now, if you're hitting a snare drum or you're playing a snare drum, and you're just getting this non-stop annoying rattle. Okay, it's not the buzz that you want, like it's an actual rattle that you can't get rid of. The problem might lie with the snare wires themselves. Now these snare wires, when they're sitting on your snare drum, these have to be pretty much dead center, sitting, right in the middle of the drum. And the edges of these wires should be almost the exact same distance when they're engaged anyway, they should be the exact same distance from the rim. If they're pulled off center, that could be a problem. I've seen other snare drums where the wires are actually sitting kind of weirdly lopsided. I don't know if you can see that. They might be sitting weird position like that off center, and they were tightened up that way. That can also cause a problem. So no matter how you get it on there and you get the tension where you want it, you're still getting this annoying kind of prolonged rattle. The problem there is with the snare wires. So what you literally have to do is loosen everything off and recenter them. This can be kind of annoying because I don't know a single drummer that actually likes adjusting snare wires. But if that's where the problem is lying, then you got to put some time in and make sure that these are sitting straight. Now, I've also seen a couple of cases where one or two of the individual wires themselves snapped off on one end. So you might have one of these kind of dangling and hanging. I mean, that's an obvious problem if you ever see that. You can, if you got something handy, you can take it and snip it off, or you can just sort of take it, twist it and twirl it until it gets loose and just sort of snap it off. That's sort of a temporary fix, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's just time for them to go. Just go out, get a new set of wires and stick them on there. Now, since we got the hood open on these snares, here's another problem that you might actually run into. There's been several cases where I've seen the snare side head is completely overstretched. And this is something that you'll notice as soon as you flip your snare over and take a look at it. Because what you'll see, let's see if I can show this to you. I don't know if you can tell, but it's literally sitting flush with the hoop. Now, this is something that I would normally see with snare drums, like cheaper snare drums that have triple flange hoops on there. I've seen a lot of, Pearl export snares that look like this. But yeah, it's just the snare head's been on there for 100 years and it's just been stretched out to capacity. So that there is just, it's a no-brainer. It's time to take that thing off and replace it. Now, this next issue is something that I've seen more often with cheaper snares, right? So anything under 150 bucks. These are the ones that come with the kits that come in entire packages under $1,000. But sometimes what can happen is the head can end up sitting unevenly on the shell. And the cause of this normally is a warped hoop. And sometimes, the odd one can make it out of the factory like that. But if this hoop isn't 100% round, no matter how you seat the head, when you tighten it down, it's going to sit uneven. Now, the problem that you run into is, where that hoop is actually out of round, you'll actually see it. You'll be able to see a bit of a gap between the head itself and the hoop. So there'll be a little bit of a space that you'll be able to look down and actually see where the glue's making contact. And in cases like this, it really doesn't matter what you do. Like, no matter how careful you try to be when you seat the head and try to tune it evenly, it's just not going to work. Now, unfortunately, the only fix for that is to just buy a new hoop and stick it on there. And then finally, the last and most obvious cause for a crappy sounding snare drum, the head simply just has too much mileage on it. Now, sometimes this is an obvious visual thing that you can tell just from looking at it. Sometimes it's not that obvious until you loosen the head itself. And it's pretty easy to tell because when you take it off, or when you even loosen it, the minute you start to loosen it, it'll start to crater in the middle and it starts to look like that, right? Once this happens, this is toast. This is a frisbee, man. This thing needs to go because you can't bring this back to life after you take it off, right? You're not going to be able to stretch that back out. Now, if you want to use that ghetto technique where you get a hairdryer and, try to shrink it back up again, I mean, that's one thing. But come on, just go buy another head. Sometimes that's all you need, man. I mean, I've been to a church recently where I was sort of reconditioning the kit, and it was a really nice snare drum. It was like a Sonar AQ2 or something like that. And I was asking the music pastor why this snare is never played. He's like, well, my drummers tell me it's just old. I'm like, what are you talking about, man? This is a brand new snare. All you got to do is change the head, stick it on there, and it's brand new. It's like, what's wrong with you? You need to go pray for these people. So if you haven't encountered a crappy sounding snare up until this point, don't worry about it. You will. Hopefully this video will help you out. Now you know what to look for. Now, if there's anything I missed, go ahead, drop it in the comment section. Share your knowledge with some of the other people here. Thanks for watching this video. Before you go, though, I know you've been digging this t-shirt. When people ask you what you do, this is what you tell them. But if you don't feel like talking, you just want to point to the shirt, go ahead, click the link in the description box. This is one of mine. You can get this at my merch shop. Head on over there. You're going to see this and a bunch of other cool shirts for drummers. Every time you pick something up, you're supporting the channel. As for me, I'm out. Make sure you share this video if you dig it. Like, subscribe. See you next video.